In the traditional wedding of Richard and Rosie, Richard dressed Rudy his dog very well to the admiration of everyone present. He made sure he participated in all the marriage rites. The guests admired him and his beautiful dog. On the day of the white wedding, Rudy too was not missing out. It was on ground from the marching in, to the exchange of vows, and to the registry for the signing of certificate. At the reception hall, Rudy's participation almost made some guests walk away from the hall. It started when it was time for the newly wedded couple to feed each other with the cake, which was well designed with some beautiful colors, and the sweet red wine in a well-decorated wine glass. Richard fed Rudy first and insisted that Rosie his bride should feed and kiss Rudy first before him. This brought a lot of uproar in the reception hall. Even the master of the ceremony was short of words to describe the scene, but for the love of peace and to avoid open disgrace, Rosie had to accept. She fed Rudy with cake and the wine and gave him a peck. To some it was fun. They felt Rudy the dog was brought in to add color to the party, but to some it was a taboo, while to others there is a hidden truth about this dog that Richard is not telling anyone. In the hotel where they had their honeymoon, Rosie woke up in the middle of the night to see Rudy on the bed. When she confronted her husband, he said there was nobody in the house to cater for Rudy. But something within told her that it was not normal, but because she loved the husband and he too professed so much love to her, she decided to accept everything as they come. Weeks has become months, months turned to years in the marriage. Rudy has become so close to her, but from her part she has no attachment to him. She noticed anytime she sits, Rudy will want to sit on her laps or want to use his tongue on her lap. She will always get angry and hit him. But to her surprise, the husband always picks offense and wants to hit her back. This got her worried. Richard's attachment to Rudy was something that nobody could explain. They were seen together everywhere. Richard at times takes him to his office and treats him lovelier than he treats his wife, and when his wife, Rosie, complained, Richard will always tell her that before she came into the picture Rudy was already there. He will always assure her that he is just fond of his dog, nothing special between them. This she believed, but something in her that revolts against all these happenings. Richard's parents, especially his mother and other siblings, had started asking questions. It's been more than 3 years now, no baby yet. Is anything wrong with your wife? Better tell her to go find solution because I want to carry my grandchildren, Richard's mother will tell him. She comes to visit them just to remind Rosie her reason for being in her son's house. Hello Madam Rosie, I hope we did not marry another man for my son, because by now if you were a woman, I will not come here and meet empty house well arranged without children running around. Anytime I come here, is this your dog I meet? Is it this dog you are feeding with all the milk in your breast? Tell me, what is your breast milk meant for? I used my own to feed my son, I didn't use it to feed dog. Give me grandchildren. I am counting your years and I am running out of patience. When next I come I will pack your loads out. Rosie would just sit in one corner either crying or begging her mother-in-law to give them some time more. Some other times, when she sees her mother-in-law coming for a visit, she will go and hide and lock herself in one of the rooms in the house until she leaves. Rosie's parents were not left out in the worries. Severally they invited Richard and Rosie to have conversations, to suggest possible places where they could go for solution. But what baffled Rosie's father is that any time they were invited, Richard and Rosie, they always come with his dog. He also discovered that when they are discussing, instead of him to listen and take counsel, he will be busy attending or playing with the dog. Richard, I want to ask you a question, Rosie's father said one day while having discussion with them after inviting them for a dinner. What is it about this dog? Are you married to him? Because I cannot be discussing very important issue that has to do with you and your family and you are busy caressing your dog. Are you sure you are not sleeping with this dog? Daddy, Rosie cut in, how can you say a thing like that? I know my husband, he can't do such a thing. I don't have any issue with your trust for your husband. What I am saying is that I am not seeing the attachment to this his special dog as an ordinary thing. Richard picked offense, fled up, and walked away from the discussion. Rosie too was not happy. "My daughter," the father held her hand, "what an old man sees sitting down. Even when a child climbs a tree, he cannot see it. I am very sure there is something strange unknown to you about this dog. Just be careful and prayerful. I know that the whole secret will be out soon. Have you noticed any time we talked about this dog he gets angry and make sure he walked out of the conversation?" Rosie was already looking confused. "Don't worry," the father said to her, "we will get to the root of all this." Meanwhile, Richard had left with his Rudy and was sitting inside his car still caressing the dog. Rosie's mother walked to where Rosie and her father were standing. "Look, he is still busy caressing the dog even in the presence of everyone. Rosie, my daughter, there is more than what the eyes can see with this dog and your husband." They left Rosie's parents' house angrily. Rosie's instincts were trying to tell her something, but because of all the love that Richard was professing to her, she became blindfolded. Years of childlessness had increased. Richard was not really worried. Rosie thought Richard was just trying to be a strong and supportive man willing to shade her from errors from in-laws and friends. After some time, it dawned on Rosie that since they got married and faced with this issue of her not being able to get pregnant, Richard had not followed her to see any doctor. He will always tell her that there is no problem with him. That is there to be any issue, it was her. Now, through series of recommendations from friends and family, and after much persuasion, they decided to visit a particular hospital. They had called the doctor, an appointment had been scheduled. On the day of the appointment, Richard got Rudy dressed for the occasion. This didn't go well with Rosie. "Today's appointment with the doctor is for me and you and not with you and Rudy." "What is the meaning of that?" Richard asked. Richard made it clear to her that if Rudy was not going, he would not go. This resulted to a lot of arguments and fight. Richard insisted that he must go with Rudy. Rosie did not see any sense going to see a doctor with her husband, and the dog will be there with them, so the appointment for that day was cancelled. Now Rosie discovered that Rudy's attachment to her was becoming something she cannot comprehend. Rudy climbs her anywhere. He would want to naked her and be using his tongue all over her. She was lost in thoughts. One day she went to confide in her mother about what she is experiencing, how and why Richard has refused to visit the hospital with her. The mother counseled her to allow Rudy to go with them so she can have the doctor's contact since it was by recommendation. Another appointment was rescheduled. Richard reluctantly agreed. On the day, as usual, he got Rudy dressed. At the hospital, Richard and Rudy created a scene that was more than home video. Richard insisted that Rudy must enter the consulting room with him. The hospital authority insisted that the dog would not even enter the hospital, talk more of the consulting room. It became a sorry sight for Rosie. It was at this point some people told Rosie in confidence that there is much to the dog than their eyes could see. She remembered that her mother had told her this before. They left the hospital that day without them both seeing the doctor in their consulting room. Another consulting room was given to them close to emergency ward with security men all at alert. A doctor was assigned to see them. The way Richard was giving attention to his dog even while with the doctor made the doctor to know that something was wrong and it was not normal at all. Rosie was given another appointment to come alone the next day. All through the night Rosie did not sleep. She sat on the sofa in the living room. She noticed that Rudy and the husband were moving back and forth between the bedroom and the sitting room where she was seated. Severally the dog would want to jump on her. The husband kept telling her to come to bed and rest. She was just tired of the whole drama and just decided to sit throughout the night. The next morning, now more confused than she was before, she got ready to visit the hospital alone without the husband. A team of doctors were on ground to see her. Series of questions and investigations were carried out. Unfortunately, The questions were really very simple questions, which any married person could answer, but she was unable to answer them. This was a big shock to the team of doctors and even to her. Some of the questions were: how long does your husband last when having sex with you? She answered, I can't tell. I only know when we start with foreplay. I always sleep off and the next thing I see is the next morning. The doctors asked again, why do you always sleep off? She answered, it's something I cannot explain, a strange force I cannot resist comes on me always. They asked, how long was your courtship? She answered, 1 year and 2 months. Did you meet him with this dog? She answered, yes. Suddenly she came to her senses. Yes, doctor, I can remember now. During the period of our courtship, when I come around, when he makes advances to me, I will sleep off till he wakes me up to go home. Most time he was the one that will always wake me up. I have never experienced any moment I can describe with him since I've known him. Okay, one of the doctors continued, we are going to refer you to another doctor who will take you through other procedures. During the medical procedures in the theater, it was clear that some things unusual to humans have been happening to her reproductive organs. They did a procedure to clean her womb and other of her reproductive organs. One of the female doctors spoke to her in confidence, telling her that her case was peculiar and had spiritual undertone and that she needs to visit a pastor of a particular church. She encouraged and gave her the recommended drugs. On her way home, she kept asking herself these questions. Who is Richard? What is he up to? What is Richard doing with Rudy? Who am I married to? What is spiritual problem doing in my marriage? She was lost in thoughts that she almost got hit by a reckless driver. It was the scream and shout of people around that got her attention. Who raised abuses on her? Madam, I beg, look road, the driver shouted. So sorry, she said, almost shedding tears. She got home, didn't say anything to the husband, just as she has been counseled by Dr. Mary, the female doctor friend she had made in the hospital. She only showed him the drugs they gave to her. The next day she called the pastor Dr. Mary referred her to. They both scheduled a time to meet. By the time she got there, evening service had started, so she waited. After the service, to her surprise, Dr. Mary attends the church too. She later discovered the man of God she had come to see was Dr. Mary's husband. After the counseling section by Dr. Mary and the pastor, a team of prayer warriors were made to pray with her. She was told that there is something that usually takes place in her house that is unexplainable. She was advised to fix a camera in the house unknown to her husband. With the help of a technician, she planted a camera into their bedroom unknown to the husband as she was advised to do. The next day when she took the video to the pastor, while they were watching the video, she fainted and was rushed to the hospital. She discovered that for all these years she was actually married to Rudy and not Richard. Right there it was decided that Richard must not be aware yet, because there is so much spiritual undertone to all that is happening. Rudy must be killed. If she lives like that and Rudy is still alive, Richard will marry another woman for him to continue their evil doings. So, some people were arranged to help her kill Rudy. This was done one fateful morning when Richard had gone to work. But before they took the body to bury, Rosie asked that a part should be given to her. They did without questioning. She prepared a delicious meal for her dear husband, but with drug to make him dozed off. As he came home from work, he was served. Before he could ask of Rudy, he had dozed off. By the time he woke up, Rosie had picked few of her valuables and moved to another city. He looked for Rudy but no trace of his dog. He searched and called Rosie, no response. He contacted all the possible persons that would know where Rosie was. No one had positive response for him. Though he was worried for Rosie, he was more worried for Rudy. Rudy is my life, he would cry bitterly. Rudy, my life, where are you? To his surprise, his stomach started swelling up like a pregnant woman. The yolk is destroyed, the spell had boomeranged. His sight was becoming embarrassing. His parents came to his rescue, visited several healing homes without solution at sight. Until they visited where they told him to confess. When he was at the point of death, the pain was now unbearable and his stomach was as big as a pregnant woman who has gotten to terms. Confess or you die, the last herbalist they met said to Richard. So he started confessing. It all started when I was in the final year in the university. Some of my friends took me to a party where I was initiated into a cult. They promised to give me power to be able to control people, where whatever he says stands. When I graduated, I was given a dog that they said is the one that is holding my life for me to stay alive and be in control. And I have to marry a wife for the dog. I thought it was simply to marry another dog for Rudy to be living together. But was surprised to hear that the source of the continuous flow of this power is when the dog starts sleeping with human. That was why I married Rosie, my wife, for Rudy. Did Rosie agree to this? To marry a dog? Somebody asked. His answer was a big surprise to everyone. Rosie never knew she was married to Rudy. She thought she was married to me. They gave me a charm. Anytime I am with Rosie, I will pretend that I want to sleep with her and I will initiate a foreplay. When she is now in the mood, I will touch her with the charm. A substance tied in a black and red piece of cloth that was given to me. She will lose control of herself for hours. That is when I will now bring Rudy to have sex with her. This she had done for years unknown to her. Every single one in the room, including the herbalist, were utterly surprised. This can't be true. The mother screamed in disbelief, causing a scene in the herbalist's place. Where is Ruby? Rudy is my life. His breathing was getting abnormal. Once I see Rudy, I will be okay. You can't be okay. You won't be okay, you wicked soul. You made me sleep with your dog for years unknown to me. You can never be okay. Rudy is dead, you can't see him. Your charm is destroyed, your evil has caught up with you. Everyone was surprised to see Rosie as she entered the herbalist's house. News travel fast, especially news like this. Rosie got the news of Richard's condition and where his parents has taken him to. She decided to come see him. Immediately Richard heard the voice of Rosie. He tried to summon up courage to speak. Where is Ruby? He tried so hard to mutter, Ruby is in your stomach, that is what you are carrying like pregnancy. Rosie continued. I cooked him for you. You have killed me, Richard cried bitterly. Please forgive us, Richard's parents begged Rosie. Our family has wronged you, knowing his end was close because of the covenant he entered in the cult, which was now broken by Rosie. With his last breath, he also asked for forgiveness from Rosie, but it was already too late. At that point it dawned on him that all the sacrifices he did were of no use. And he would die leaving the money and properties behind. He taught everybody there a big lesson, that it was better to live a good and honest life, than to get involved in ungodly and evil things to get wealthy. So, after many attempts to stop the pain, it didn't work. Richard died. And that was the end of him. If you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more captivating stories. Stay tuned for our next engaging tale.